the call affected by our tax plan. Most don't have a team of accountants who handle their monies offshores. The small businesses I know pay their taxes. We're asking for the ultra wealthy to do the same, for the people like the owners of Loblaws to pay a little bit more so we can reduce this cost of small businesses, the businesses here in Niagara that are our bread and butter. COVID, as I said, has been awful on small business. The first thing we need is to continue programs that help small businesses pay rent and retain employees. From there, our plan lays out how we would help them cover federal costs of employees, such as EI and CPP, so long as they rehire or hire new employees. So if they bring people back under an NDP plan, they would get a break on federal contributions. We would also remove costs associated with dental care, pharma care, and mental health care. We saw this work in BC, and it helps small businesses thrive. I think that's what we need here. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Brian. Our next speaker will be Peter.
So getting labor is contingent on providing good working conditions. Imagine working in a hot kitchen or a hotel and having to wear a mask for 8 hours. Meanwhile, the government is offering you $2,000 to stay at home on CERB. It's understandable why some people would choose to stay at home. Now, imagine another situation where you're applying for a job and your employer asks you to show your vaccine status before you get the job, and then you still need to wear a mask. If the person does not want to be coerced into the vaccine, why would they take the job? Imagine you are running a business and you're in the enviable position of having a dedicated, well-trained staff, and a lockdown occurs and everyone has to be let go. But in the meantime, your employees find other work or decide to stay on CERB and work a few cash jobs. The threat of lockdowns do nothing to improve the ability to staff your business. Also, if I was a worker, there was a chance that I may only be working for a few weeks before another lockdown, then why would I take a job that's threatened by lockdown? I would try to train myself towards a job that's immune to lockdowns. We have people who are willing to work, but the circumstances of lockdowns, coerced vaccination, mandated masking, make it difficult to train people who wouldn't work under these conditions provided. It was hard enough to find people before all these draconian measures were implemented, but now the problem is more acute. How do we solve this problem? To start with, we need to end mask mandates, end lockdowns, and ensure they never happen again. Stop discriminating against potential employees who do not want a vaccine, and give people their freedoms back. Every one of us can fall into the trap of thinking they know what is best for all people. In fact, every dictator in history has been able to justify their actions as moral and just. The only thing that protects societies from one person or group forcing their idea of what is best on another is free will for all. Individuals need to be able to choose for themselves what is best for them. The four principles that undergird our entire platform are freedom, fairness, personal responsibility, and respect. With respect, even if we disagree on everything, we can build a functional society where we can solve each other's problems with compromise and debate. When we cancel each other, this is a step towards a societal breakdown. And if we are reduced to name calling, blaming, and accusing, then we lose sight that every Canadian must be united in our common cause of hope for the future and strength of our individuals. So when we have these issues, people not only lose hope in their country, but they also lose their motivation to succeed. So we need to return that hope for the future. And when we do that, the motivation to succeed will be returned. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Tony, please.
Thank you. In September of 2020, I was pleased to have been appointed the special advisor on tourism recovery to our leader in the Conservative team, and pleased to sit around our shadow cabinet. As many of you know, I mean, we're the #1 leisure destination in all of Canada. You know, we employ down here in Niagara 40,000 workers in the tourism sector. We generate about $2.4 billion in tourism receipts alone, 16,000 hotel rooms, 4,000 workers at the casinos alone, excuse me. As I always say, tourism was hit first, it was hit the hardest, and it's going to take the longest to recover. In fact, Destination Canada says our recovery to 2019 levels won't be seen until at least 2025, 2026. I was disappointed by the recent budget that was announced, which only provided $1 billion for a sector of our Canadian economy, which is $105 billion. Again, Niagara Falls generates $2.4 billion alone. I mean, tourism is about 1 in 10 jobs in this country, 2% of GDP. So the support provided was inadequate. I mean, of the $500 million allocated to the Regional Relief Fund, if you look at the criteria, it excludes hotels, restaurants, and retail. So who in fact is it meant to help? So when we put forward our Canada Recovery Plan as our platform to go forward in this election, we pledged to restore those million jobs lost during this pandemic. This government said by June, those million jobs that had been lost would be recovered. And we still got probably about 365,000 people out of work. So as part of that, we've created within our platform what we call the Canada Job Surge Plan. We're going to cover up to 50% of the wage for a new employee hired by an employer for 6 months after the end of the wage subsidy, which is scheduled to end in October. We're going to rebuild Main Street. We have a special initiative called the Rebuilding Main Street. We're going to be providing a 25% tax credit up to investments of $100,000 into new and small businesses. Small business is the strength of our economy and the job creation engine. We're also going to create immediately a new kind of CEBA loan program of up to 4 months of covering up to 4 months of pre-pandemic revenue, up to a maximum of $200,000. And up to 25% will be depending on a company's revenue loss. We're also going to be investing in job training programs, double the apprenticeship job tax credit, for example. And we're going to work in terms of ensuring our temporary foreign workers are continuing to be allowed to get here and work here, as well as our foreign students that are here. Those are just some of the initiatives that we have planned.
Andrea?
Thank you. As a business person who has worked in the tourism sector for almost 30 years and one who often worked on the front lines throughout the pandemic, I truly know firsthand how difficult the past 18 months have been for our sector. I also know how crucial programs like the wage subsidy, rent subsidy, and CEBA account that our federal government implemented have been helping businesses throughout the pandemic. Our Liberal government has been there for small Canadian businesses and will continue to be for them as we recover. That being said, I have no doubt at this time, the labor shortages that we're facing in our local businesses and throughout the community is in part driven by a workers' fear of going back to work, especially amid the Delta variant. This is, of course, particularly true in the tourism sector, where workers are on the front lines, serving customers directly, often customers from out of town. At the height of the pandemic, I led a team in the tourism sector throughout. And my team told me they were nervous, they were scared, they were worried about contracting COVID from unvaccinated travelers and customers, and are of course now facing the Delta variant. So I believe the best way to get workers back to work is by implementing a vaccine certification so that they feel safe and secure. We also will look to help businesses retain existing employees by extending the wage and rent subsidy programs. And I'd just like to correct that the commitment is to March 31st, 2022 for those sectors hardest hit, like tourism. And we would be contained within that clause to help local businesses in the tourism sector get through the winter. And we are the only party that has committed to this extension to March 31st. We also want to help businesses attract new employees with our new Canada Recovery Hiring Program. The hiring program makes it as easy as possible for businesses to hire new workers or bring back laid off workers by covering up to 50% of incremental payroll costs associated with new hires. And as a personal small business owner from many years ago, I truly understand the difference that this will make to small businesses. The program overall will help us create 1 million jobs and address these labor shortages. It is such an impactful program, in fact, that truly the Conservatives have copied it and put it on their platform under a different name. If elected, I will demonstrate decisive leadership by immediately convening a jobs and recovery task force alongside other levels of government within the riding, industry, and labor to draft a post-pandemic economic development and job creation strategy for our riding. One that will create a vision of where we want to go within this community and to move us forward. This strategy will be, again, with input from the community and stakeholders, and will outline a comprehensive vision to build a robust and very vibrant local economy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next scenario is we're going to rotate our candidates by one and keep the same order. So Peter will be starting, and the scenario is, as our businesses adapt to a post-pandemic world, how do we incorporate a policy that ensures that people's health is protected while we still maintain the civil rights and freedoms that every Canadian is entitled to? Peter, please.
So in terms of the civil liberties and protecting the civil liberties and freedom that every Canadian is entitled to, I would say that our current politicians are not respecting our charter. We need to return to respecting every aspect of Part 1, Section 1 of the Bill of Rights and Section 2 of the Charter of Rights. Every single one of the 6 rights guaranteed by the Charter has been violated by our own government. When we enter this situation, this is a very dangerous situation when our own politicians are not respecting the essence of what Canada is. Government cannot solve all human problems or end suffering. And to think that any one thing, the mass lockdowns, the mask wearing, vaccinations, social distancing, restricting freedom of association, and making these things appear to be the solutions of solving all human problems and reducing COVID numbers is absolute nonsense. Only more suffering is caused by not allowing people to solve their own problems within the family and a community structure. These family structures and communities create a social network to strengthen people, not only when they get sick, but before they get sick. When freedoms are removed, a void is created in the human soul, and fear, discouragement, and desperation start to fill that void, which is manifested now. We see it: increased drug addiction, increased suicide rates, increased domestic violence. Now, for 2020, the UN worldwide death rate was 7.612 per 1,000 people living worldwide. In 2021, now that we have the cure to the disease, you'd expect the death rate to be lower. It's not. It's 7.648 per 1,000 people. This defies common sense. Now that we have the cure to the disease, the death rate is higher. I would like to propose 3 things to improve the business situation in Niagara. End the lockdowns immediately. Stop the mass testing of people and allow people to have freedom in terms of their vaccination status. Allow businesses and individuals the freedom to decide what is best for their own health and their business. This patronizing attitude of the wealthy elites and big government thinking that they know what is best for my health needs to end. The government should be providing information and not be in the business of inciting mass hysteria and promoting mass psychosis. What we need to be promoting is hope, unity, and a vision for the future.
30
Thank you.
seconds.
Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Peter. Tony, please.
Thank you. When COVID-19 hit, the current government wasn't ready. We were caught unprepared. They made bad decisions, which cost lives and crippled our economy. So going forward, our goal is simple, be prepared and take rapid action so that we protect the health of Canadians while avoiding long-term impacts on the economy and mental health. In terms of our positions with regards to COVID-19, our position is one which I believe is a balanced one. Ultimately, Canadians have the right to make their own health choices. To us, vaccines are a safe and effective tool to stop the spread of COVID-19, and we encourage everyone who is able to get one. My family and I were vaccinated. For those not vaccinated, we believe rapid testing is a method and an alternative so that we can protect those most vulnerable. This Liberal government began this campaign talking about mandating vaccines, and it sounded as if they were going to be firing federal government workers, when in fact Treasury Board Secretariat then came out and had on its website rules saying, no, it would be vaccinations or rapid tests. And a conservative government will require federal public servants who aren't vaccinated to pass a daily rapid test. And within our federally regulated sectors, we will require unvaccinated Canadian passengers to present a recent negative test or pass a rapid test before getting on a train, plane, or ship. Our party also supports a streamlined system that helps Canadians verify their vaccine status when they travel abroad. And those are some of the issues and some of the positions that we have with regards to how we do this in a fair and balanced manner. Thank you.
Freya?
Thank you. It's very simple, really. The best tool we have at our disposal to end this pandemic and get on with our lives is vaccination certificates. We do believe Canadians have the right to choose whether or not they want to be vaccinated, but we also believe that the decision not to be vaccinated cannot put others in our community in harm's way. We all have the right to be safe from infection contracted from the unvaccinated. And truly, when we look at the numbers and what's happening across Canada, this has become the pandemic, the fourth wave of the unvaccinated. We have clearly said that we will require proof of vaccination for travel on trains, planes, and ships. Our young children should have the right to travel with peace of mind, and their parents should have the right to travel with peace of mind that they aren't sitting across the aisle on a plane from an unvaccinated person that is asymptomatically carrying COVID-19. We have also worked with the provinces to implement vaccine certificates at the provincial level for non-essential activities. Thanks to our leadership, we got Doug Ford to implement a vaccine passport, something I don't think any of us thought was coming for Ontario, but great news. This is really the only way that we will end the pandemic and avoid future lockdowns. The Conservatives have said that they think rapid tests are enough. They are not enough. They are not good enough. A positive test, a positive result is too late. Not only will vaccine certificates keep Canadians healthy and safe, but they will also allow businesses to stay open and attract workers back to the workplace where they want to be, because they'll no longer be fearful of going to work on the front lines. And quite truly, this is not a new concept. I mean, when I recall my young children going to the doctor's office and carrying along my little yellow folder that I didn't want to lose, that showed that my children had the proof of vaccination before entering public school. And at this time, at this juncture, we owe it to our kids, we owe it to our seniors and the immunocompromised, and truly to our businesses who cannot afford another lockdown, to keep everyone safe as possible and to become vaccinated.
Thank you. And then Brian, please.
Yeah, so I mean, we know that COVID has impacted businesses immensely, and lockdowns also don't work. So we have to do something different, and the way to that is vaccination. Vaccination has proved to be an effective tool in terms of reducing the risk, reducing the spread. Andrea stole a bit of my thunder talking about, we've already had vaccine passports. I'm a teacher, so the immunization records that you carry is essentially are those, right? And the reason why we have those in place is so that we can ensure, not only the safety of the person who has it, but the safety of others. I have personal experience with a death from COVID, and it's terrible. And I hope what I went through, no one else has to go through. So by ensuring that, everyone who could get the vaccine gets the vaccine, we believe that will drastically reduce the spread, and it will have far less of an impact on businesses. We want businesses to stay open. We want businesses to thrive. If we continue in the sort of the yo-yoing that we've seen, it's detrimental to everybody. And in terms of civil rights, it also comes with responsibilities. We don't have the right to put someone else in harm here in Canada. For example, like I have the right to extend my fist, but it can't be at someone else's nose. So while it may seem like taking away your rights is a way, taking away your rights is a way that we can give everybody else the right to live freely and safely. And some of the measures we're calling for: a federal mandated vaccine passport, because currently right now there are some provinces that aren't implementing that. If businesses are to thrive and to be well, we have to have conditions where it's safe. And if we can put that, implement those things and ensure the greater public health and safety, our businesses won't be forced to have to pivot and flip-flop. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, everyone. Our third topic here is the extended closure of our local borders impacted many of our businesses. Moving forward, how do we protect public health while still supporting the movement of people across borders to ensure our business efforts? And Tony will begin this round.
Thank you, Kevin. First of all, it had been about 4 or 5 months now that we've been advocating of this government, prior to this election call, for a safe and responsible recovery plan. In fact, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce was asking the same type of question and asking for the metrics that would be presented for a safe and responsible reopening plan. And we agree, and we still continue to wait to this day for that plan to be developed and presented. When you do begin to open, for example, allowing American vaccinated travelers into the country as a beginning, would it not be incumbent on our government to negotiate a reciprocity allowing Canadians into the United States who are fully vaccinated? There are several families who are still divided because of the closure of the border. In November of 2020, the government established the Testing and Screening Expert Advisory Panel, which was to present recommendations with regards to the border. And they released their report in the spring, which I understand and our party understands the government was sitting on for about 4 to 6 weeks. Within that expert advisory panel, they had the recommendations to end the hotel quarantine program because it wasn't based on science. And within their expert advisory panel, they have a series of suggestions for the government on border measures for persons entering Canada, from those not vaccinated to those fully vaccinated. So as we begin to recover and begin to open up, it's incumbent on the government to follow the science. Again, I mean, the COVID-19 has been devastating, has had a devastating impact on our small businesses. The border, for example, itself. Why is it in April I had to advocate and ask during question period why our CBSA officers were not yet vaccinated? Other frontline workers were, and to the detriment of our own CBSA officers. We had to push to have that happen. It's been over a year. Last June, our 2 bridge commissions wrote to the government looking for a type of relief package and assistance similar to what the United States was doing for their bridges and what our government was doing to our international airports. And in November, we still had yet to hear, but during the economic statement, the government provided $3 million to their 4 bridges and nothing to our 2 local bridge authorities.
30 seconds.
We continue to press this government on that support, and we have still not heard back from that letter of last June. And then subsequently, the government in their financial plans for those 4 bridges is going to be allocating $38 million to those 4 bridges, and still nothing here for Niagara. That is totally unacceptable. These 2 bridge commissions have been devastated by the impacts of COVID, and they need assistance just as those businesses here in our community do. Thank you.
Andrea?
Thank you. It's clear to me that over the last 18 months, the government has prioritized the health and safety of everyone in Canada by taking what I would call a risk-based and measured approach to our borders. As a small business person and residents who obviously understood the devastation of the small businesses we're going through the pandemic, but also was concerned for my neighbors, and one that has worked in the sector for almost 30 years, I was hearing very similar thoughts to what I was thinking in terms of the thoughts of businesses in Niagara Falls, Fort Erie, and Niagara-on-the-Lake, that they were very thankful for this health and safety approach and would like to see the government continue to inform the border policy to keep their workers safe, to keep their families safe. And they were appreciative of this approach because at the same time, the government was providing relief and they were able to continue to function their business through the pandemic. At this point in time, travelers who have completed the full course of vaccination with the Government of Canada approved vaccine at least 14 days prior to entering Canada and have produced a valid pre-arrival COVID-19 molecular test result with no more than 72 hours are allowed to enter Canada. Again, a very balanced approach. All travelers must use AirCan through an app or a web portal to submit their traveler information. And if they are eligible to enter Canada and meet this very specific criteria and are fully vaccinated, of course, they do not have to quarantine upon arrival. This gradual approach to reopening will allow our health authorities to monitor COVID-19 situation here and abroad. Canadians have worked very hard and sacrifice so much for each other. And because of that work, we can take these next steps very safely. As the Niagara Falls Review recently said, in fact, this week, the conservative approach to vaccinations will prolong the pandemic and suffering of small businesses. We have the evidence-based approach that will help us end the spread of COVID-19 and avoid those associated lockdowns, which we know would be disastrous for businesses and workers across our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
So, this is a question that Niagara really needs answered. And so far, I feel the Liberals have let us down. It's important that we listen to the advice of health experts when it comes to making decisions surrounding the management of the border in order to keep people on both sides safe, especially as the cases in the US are on the rise. We also need to ensure that the supports are in place to keep border workers safe. Business owners who rely on passage over the border have been left living in limbo for 18 months. That's 40,000 jobs in the tourism sector, which have been affected due to the ongoing closures. Even worse, there are families torn apart by the closure. It's clear the American government is in the driver's seat here. So we need a strong government that puts the needs of Niagara on the national agenda and gives us a clear plan for when and how these families can be reunited. And this has been lacking with Prime Minister Trudeau. We need them to encourage safe travel and support our businesses in getting the message out. Once it's safe to travel here, businesses need help advertising that the places come to. We need to bring people back, and we have to balance the responsibility of once the border opens, making sure that we're also protecting the health and safety of Canadians who are here. So any visitor that comes in would have to be vaccinated because as we said before, if we don't deal with COVID, no one wants another lockdown. It's detrimental to businesses. It impacts the local economy. So whatever we do, we need the borders to open in a safe way, and we need to make sure that it's safe so that businesses stay open, thrive, survive, and get our local economy working. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter, please.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that only listening to scientists that agree with your view is not following the science. I mean, why not follow the scientists, Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Byron Brittle, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny? There are many, many scientists who disagree with our current handling of this COVID pandemic and the way we've handled the borders. I would say let's start treating our citizens and visitors with respect. Allow individuals to choose how dangerously they want to live their lives. It's not up to government to decide how much risk I'm allowed to take. Centralized control of my health and my risk is not the way to solving these problems. I mean, if somebody wants to drive a race car, that's up to them. If big government should not be involved with how many people I have over for Christmas dinner. I mean, since the beginning of this pandemic, since the beginning of this pandemic, I am now less hopeful for the future. Our country is less unified, and our country now has a massive debt to show for our panic in response to this COVID crisis. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower had it right when he said that government is not there to provide safety. When he said, if you want total security, go to prison. There you're fed, clothed, given medical care, and so on. The only thing lacking is freedom. We need to open up our borders immediately and allow citizens to move freely without any restrictions or conditions or any illegal detainment. This is only increasing our debt and is increasing costs for travelers. Many Canadians in our riding have families and friends in the US that have not been able to see them. I mean, building these strong interpersonal relationships helps keep a person healthy and also helps get a person through sickness when they have it. I mean, keeping our borders closed, having these testing requirements, these quarantine requirements, which are unconstitutional, will add needlessly to our debt without any appreciable effect to health. In fact, no one can prove that a single life was saved by lockdowns, mask mandates. And now I've showed you with the vaccination pass, the vaccinations, with all these mandates, our actual worldwide death rate is now higher, according to the UN. Let's get people back to treating people symptomatically. We're a great country, we're compassionate. An asymptomatic person, back in the olden days, was a healthy person. They don't need to be intruded on by government. We can improve our healthcare by allowing doctors to do their job without being censored by the College of Physicians and Surgeons. I mean, there are many treatments to COVID-19 that are being censored by the college that do not involve vaccinations. Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, vitamin D, zinc. If doctors were allowed to do their job, they might find other treatments other than vaccination. Maybe vaccination is good for some, but not others. The Liberal government tried to sneak in 3 censorship laws before the election call, Bill C-10, Bill C-36, and Bill C-6. A PPC government will be an advocate of free speech and freedom of expression. Any posts on social media that question the big pharma globalist narrative are censored. Good health is not just about vaccines. There's exercise, proper sunshine, wholesome food, appropriate medical intervention, and clean water. If these vaccines work, then they are not contingent upon others getting them. If the vaccines work, then unvaccinated are the only ones at risk. Thank you.
All right, and our final scenario, it's going to be led by Andrea, and it is, we have heard from home builders and other service providers that as they quote on future work, they have no idea what the cost will be. This puts a lot of pressure on the business as well as the consumer. What would your party do to ensure a more reliable input cost? Andrea?
Thank you. Listen, we all know COVID-19 has been an unprecedented global pandemic that has touched virtually every country around the world. And because of its global impact, it has disrupted supply chains in our global economy, which has led to fluctuations in supply, demand, and the price for products such as lumber. Our federal government is taking action to make Canada more resilient against future global supply chain disruptions by building a domestic economic capacity in critical sectors. We have made improving Canadian domestic capacity and economic resilience a key priority of our jobs and growth economic recovery plan. Thanks to our federal Liberal government's work, we are now fully self-sufficient on PPE and vaccine production. And we will continue to build domestic capacity in other sectors, including for critical inputs like raw materials, so that we can keep prices stable and guarantee domestic supply over the long term. Our Liberal record on supporting the Canadian economy is strong. We stood up to Trump when he threatened to rip up NAFTA and destroy our economy. Because of our strong leadership, we secured a better deal for Canada. We defended our steel and aluminum sectors against attacks and are now growing steel jobs right here in Niagara. We have also attracted electric vehicle manufacturing mandates from Ford and GM right here in Southern Ontario, creating thousands of good auto jobs. As Canadians, we are blessed with some of the best natural resources and most talented workers. A Liberal government will invest in our workers and entrepreneurs to build a strong, robust supply chain, a resilient economy, and good local jobs right here in Niagara.
Thank you. Brian, please.
So I grew up in Welland, and Welland was a steel town for well, it's a dying steel town, or a dead steel town now. And unfortunately, towns like that, we haven't really recovered from that. So we have an opportunity here in terms of to address something like climate change by bringing good green manufacturing jobs back. By creating infrastructure and creating these new jobs that would be committed to combating climate change, what we're actually doing is, we're going to be boosting our local economy, because now, if we could bring these jobs here and create these jobs to address this very, very real issue, families are going to have money to go out and spend and support your businesses. The other thing I think we have to take a look at, and I know the question addressed from home builders in terms of the quote on future work and not having ideas what the costs will be. I think an issue we have here in Niagara actually is housing in terms of the crisis. If we continue to price ourselves and the costs continue to rise, you're not going to have anyone to buy the product. So, I think we have an obligation to address the housing crisis. In 2015, the average price of a home in Niagara Falls was $239,000. Today, it's $693,000. So, I think we need to address this by providing affordable housing options. I think this could be achieved with the right mix of effective measures that work in partnership with provinces and municipalities, building capacity for social, community, and affordable housing providers to provide rental support for co-ops, and meeting environmental efficiency goals. Like I said, this plan will create thousands of jobs in our communities, and it will jumpstart our economic recovery and help Canadians not only get the affordable housing they need, but help your businesses thrive, because if folks have affordable housing, they have a good job, they're spending it in your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, next please.
I think a major contributor to these out of control costs is our debt. We need to start controlling our spending. I mean, we have to the UN, we want to withdraw from the UN. We believe it's a dysfunctional organization. $1.4 billion is being sent to foreign countries to promote abortion. We have billions of dollars being sent to other countries to promote, to reduce emissions. We have another $1 billion that is being sent to, is going to the CBC to fund the CBC, which is basically now turned into a propaganda machine for the government. There's 600 million that is going to other big media, mainstream media. They have become propaganda machines. We need to stop all this, these bailouts, all this corporate welfare. There's 10 billion a year that we plan to save from the all the subsidies going to different corporations. We want, by the end of our first term, we will balance the budget, and we plan to eliminate personal capital gains on from 50% to 0%. Ending the lockdowns. The lockdowns is what's causing the increased costs for labor, which is increasing the costs of the final product. This reducing the size of government, making government simpler. We need businesses to be able to operate more efficiently without all the government intrusions that are in their business. Provincial borders need to be opened up. I mean, it's easier to ship to a foreign country some products like alcohol or tobacco or any of these kind of products that are so highly regulated by provinces. It's easier to ship them overseas than it is to another province. This has to end. We have to open up our provincial borders. And I think with these things, it'll be a good start into helping reduce the costs, getting some stability for our builders, getting some stability for the manufacturers of the products that supply our builders. And I think with those issues, we'll be on a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tony, please.
Great, thank you. Home builders are looking for cost certainty. I mean, lumber costs, for example. I mean, we've yet for a number of years had an agreement with our US counterparts. So Canadian lumber producers are paying tariffs of over 20% on exports to the US, costing the industry millions of dollars and shuttering mills across the country. I mean, Peter had touched upon it earlier. I mean, the prime minister likes to say that monetary policy doesn't matter. Well, in fact, it does. When you're spending $424 million a day more than you're taking in, it leads to inflation, and cost certainty for our housing industry doesn't exist because inflation is running rampant. It's at probably a 10 to 20-year high, and that has a tremendous impact on housing. I mean, right now, our share of the debt for every family is about $98,000. So how are families to get ahead? I mean, within our own home housing plan, I mean, we're committed. I mean, our younger generation must have that fair opportunity to realize the dream of home ownership. We're committed to having 1 million homes built by our sector in the next 3 years by our home builders. And we're going to release about 15% of the 37,000 buildings that the federal government owns. We're the largest landowner in Canada. We're going to invest in infrastructure, strategic infrastructure to build more homes near publicly funded transit. We're going to make it more easier for families to get a mortgage. We're going to be looking at creating mortgages in the 7 to 10 year range. We're going to ban foreign investors from buying home if they're not planning to move to Canada. That helps drive up the inflationary costs of housing. And we're also going to be looking at, for those individuals and companies that own rental units, if they sell those units, the capital gain, will waive that capital gain, that 25% capital gain, if they reinvest in new rental accommodations, spurring additional investment and additional rental units. So those are just some of the things that we need to do. But again, a lot of those costs, unfortunately, are on the municipal and on the regional side. I mean, development charges, municipal and regional, they average about $40,000 per single family dwelling now. I mean, there's legal fees, consulting fees, site plan fees, permit fees, archaeological fees. And why does it take 3 to 6 years for site plan approvals? The carrying cost for home builders during that time only gets added to the final price of the product that people try to get. So is it any wonder why costs continue to rise, where we're looking at, $250,000 to $300,000 just for a lot, right? I mean, we've got to do better. We've got to get to a stage where we can create an atmosphere for those that are looking to provide supply. And the problem is we don't have supply, and we have to work with our municipal and regional officials to open that. Niagara Falls is the largest growing community in this region, and we lack supply to bring into that marketplace.
Thank you. Well, that ends all our scenarios for our candidates here. I want to thank, on behalf of our 3 chambers of commerce, all of you for taking part in this forum. Especially the idea of this day and age where we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty when it comes to social media. Anyone that puts themselves forward, to help lead our community should be respected and appreciated. So for our listeners, I just want to remind everyone to get out and vote on September 20th. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone, well done, everyone.
Take care. Stay safe.